Hi, and welcome to No Story Stagnates with me, Ernie Boxall. And it's my honour to introduce Morry Zelkcovitch. Morry, will you tell my viewers who you are, where you are, and what it is you do for business?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Ernie. I appreciate you having me here. My name is Morry Zelkcovitch, like Ernie said. I'm actually a Canadian. I'm just north of the United States in a small town in Canada called Barrie, Ontario. And what I do for a living is I'm the world's first and only brainwave entrainment engineer. That means I create audio and visual stimulation patterns that alter neural activity. They alter how your brain behaves. When that happens, we alter chemistry in the brain. And when that happens, we alter how we see, feel, act, and react to the world around us.
And if I can come in there, Morry, say that I have been honoured to be able to take and test some of your business. I'm not quite sure how to, but your brain waves, and they've certainly worked on helping me sleep.
Oh, very nice to hear. Thank you for the feedback.
Oh, thank you. So, Morry, the first question that I ask all of my guests: do you know how your mother and father met?
That's an interesting question because until you asked me the question, I never even thought to consider it. But interestingly enough, they met in Winnipeg, Manitoba in high school. So I don't know the actual dynamics of what brought them together. My dad is a few years older. So I don't think they met in the same classroom.
Nope.
But they would have met maybe at a school dance, maybe at some kind of social event, or
Yes.
maybe they bumped into each other, in the middle of the hallway on their way to class.
Do you know how the relationship blossomed, Morry? Do you have any idea how it blossomed?
Well, judging by pictures that I've seen, my mother was Miss Hudson Bay,
Right.
18 years old. And my dad looked like Superman,
Right.
quite literally, like, muscle on top of muscle. He very, very strong. Apparently his father's brothers were circus strongmen back in the day. So he had the genetic makeup. I guess it passed me by, but maybe it goes in alternate generations. But at any rate, that's my guess, at least. I don't really know. I never asked.
It's, as you say, the wonder of why I ask these questions is because in my case, and as my viewers know, my father was in the war, was an athlete, and he ate with the officers so that he could keep his strength up. He represented the battalion in all the sports. And then he never drank until 2 years afterwards, when he went into a pub with a friend he'd met in the army, and he had his first 3 pints. And feeling rather heady, he went outside for some fresh air, tripped, and knocked a woman over. Ooh. My mother.
Now that's a cool story.
If he'd have only had 2 pints, Morry, or if he'd decided to go to the toilet instead of outside, I wouldn't be here. And that, for me, is why I want these stories to start from before we were born. Because it gives us that idea that, for good or bad, a decision to turn right or left will perhaps have a lot to do with our future.
Yeah, it makes you think.
Yeah. So, Morry, from the years 1 to 10, I'd like a story which, good or bad, has made such an impression on you that you remember it straight away and you've learned lessons from it.
Okay, so I've never given that any thought either. This is all very intriguing for me, especially being a brain guy. So the only thing I remember from 1 and 10, not just a story, but the only thing I remember is coming home from school on a small school bus. And I had a giant scab or something on my elbow that I guess I picked at, being a 1 to 10-year-old, and it started bleeding. and a kid was nice enough to give me, and it's funny that I don't remember anything from 1 to 10 except this. He
Yes.
gave me a Hershey bar, chocolate bar wrapper,
Yes.
to put there to kind of
Right.
stop the bleeding. And that's the only thing I remember. And it's funny because I love helping people, and maybe that's where it came from. I've never thought of that before.
No.
You're blowing me away here, man.
Well, I guess my first thought as you said that, Morry, was that if you'd have contacted Hershey and told them the story that their bar wrapper helped your bleeding, you could have had a lifetime's worth of Hershey bars sent to you.
Which is actually interesting because I can't eat chocolate.
Right.
So
Now, I hope you don't mind me, and you can say mind your own business.
no, ask anything you want. I'm an open book.
As a shiatsu therapist, within the first 3 years of my training, I realized that when someone new came to me and I asked them about their past, many would tell me a story of about when they were 4 in a pram playing with they could remember their mother and dad pushing them, or they remembered playing with their brothers in the back garden. There were those though who would put their head down and would start to either be silent or I remember when I was 12, and then once they become comfortable with me after about 3 to 4 treatments, they would say, actually, when I was 8, I was bullied, raped, beaten. So, maybe we'll come back to that.
I was bullied, but it wasn't when I was 8 or 9 or 10.
No.
It was when I was in like 12, 13, 14. And that's the only thing I remember from those age groups either.
Well, this is where we come now, Morry. A story between 11 and 15.
Yeah, I don't actually remember any specific. Well, actually, there is one. Living in an apartment building in a place called North York, Ontario, which is a community part of Toronto,
Yeah,
in Canada. And there's 2 memories. The other one just popped in, but the first one was being bullied in fight with like 10 or 15 people, and I was the only one on my team.
Yeah.
So I was being ganged up on. Back then, there was a lot of negative. I'm Jewish by birth. I don't follow religion personally, but I'm Jewish by birth. And there was a lot of racism against Jews back then.
Right.
So, and there was no identifiable minorities other than Jews.
Right.
Back then, it was all white bread, so
Yeah.
to speak. And the other one was my mom was a nursing student, and she brought home a human foot.
Right.
Bones all wired together.
Yeah.
And I was jiggling it in front of some young lady, girl,
Yeah.
on the bus on the way home to scare her and freak her out.
Right.
And those are the 2 things that I remember from that age category, but I don't remember specifically what age that.
So, do you remember the outcome of that?
Well, the foot thing, I got in trouble because my mom saw me doing it.
Yeah.
So,
and how about the fight?
The fight, I took out a few of them.
Yeah.
Before I got the crap kicked out of me.
Right.
But if you were to keep and score at home, it was like 3-1. So
could you say, Morry, that you learned something from the bullying episode?
I could say that I should have learned something, but all it did was give me a bigger mouth, and it was probably my big mouth that got me into the fight in the first place.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how about the foot?
No, I learned nothing as a kid. I just kept making the same mistakes over and over and over again.
Wonderful.
I was I didn't identify then this way, but upon reflection, later in life, I realized I was severely depressed.
Yeah.
Through that entire period, all the way up to like 40.
Right.
So I'm sure that played a large role in me
Yeah.
trying to hurt myself and
Right.
trying to have others hurt me and
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff.
So we'll come into that. 18 to 20, oh, sorry, 16 to 20, Morry. You must have been, in fact, let's go back a little bit. 11 to 15 and school. How did you enjoy school, or was it a problem?
The only thing I liked about school at that age was watching girls develop.
Right.
I hate
Yeah.
to admit it, but you're asking me to be honest. So
Sure.
I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
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 But otherwise, no, I didn't like school at all. I
Yeah.
hated school.
Did you have any lessons that sort of related to you related to?
Not really.
No.
No.
Interesting.
I mean, there was one teacher I liked.
Yeah.
He was a history teacher.
Right.
And I remember learning about World War II.
Yes.
And that's vaguely, I don't really remember details or anything.
No. And did you go to college?
University, yes.
University. And can you tell me that must have been 16 to 20?
Uh, you know what? I don't even know the ages. I don't really
No.
keep track of age. But yeah, it was around probably 17, 18,
Right.
20 in that neighborhood somewhere. Yeah, there was a gas bombing. Someone did tear gas.
Right.
And I actually was the only student because I happened to be in the right place at the right time. And I dropped my books and I ran in to evacuate what was called the Ross building, the main floor,
Yes.
which was affected by it. And then when the police and the fire department came, I let them know which rooms I had already evacuated and which
Right.
ones, which I found amusing because I always had to look at a map to know where the rooms were.
Yeah.
But when I'm telling the police and the fire department, and they of course checked the rooms that I said I had evacuated,
Yes.
anyway, and it turned out I was right. So that was kind of odd.
So a little bit that you actually ran into the building again.
Yeah. Well, the building was attached to a main, they called it
Yeah.
Central Square,
Right.
to a main area. And then there were like doors sealing it off.
Yes.
And what happened was a young lady ran out, and I just, like I said, I happened to be in the wrong place at the right place at the right time, depending on how you want to look at it.
Yes.
And her eyes were swollen and she was crying and red, irritated by the tear gas.
Yes.
And we didn't know it was tear gas at the time. There was just
Right.
smoke everywhere. And then as soon as I saw it, I had to go in and help.
There you go. Interesting.
It was just a reflex. I didn't even think about what I was doing.
No, and that's often where bravery comes from.
Yeah, and I didn't. There was no telephone booth handy, so I had nowhere where I could change clothes. Into Superman costume.
Brilliant. So that takes us up to 20, Morry. And again, I'd like to carry the conversation on, particularly looking at this incident of teenage or depression. Obviously something that within, I believe, the next 10 or 20 years is something that will become more and more prevalent post-COVID.
Yeah. Well, for me, the depression was there the whole time.
Yeah.
Like conscious awareness, probably even before that. I suspect it might have had something to do with some kind of a chemical imbalance.
Right.
But, back then they didn't give pills, right? So
No.
when I finally did go to doctors, which would have been in my 20s, they just said, you're coping really well. There's not much we can do for you.
Now, I do know I have friends whose two people I know whose sons were both very creative people. One was an artist, and one, even as a young 13 to 14-year-old, was fascinated by spiders, and they both hung themselves. And certainly with the artist, his first painting in oils was done at about 10 and 11. And it was of him and two of his sisters in what looked like a recreation of the Scream. And so he was almost a serial suicide attempt.
Yeah.
And then eventually, funnily enough, his life seemed to settle down. He got into college, and his parents were saying he's really enjoying life. And then the next thing they heard, he'd hung himself.
Yeah, that's the thing about depression. There comes a time, it seems to be coming a time where people run out of options, or you feel like you've run out of options, and you start just trying to distract yourself. You do anything you can to distract yourself from how you feel.
Yeah.
And you'll find that some of the funniest people, some of the people who look like they're enjoying life the most, are actually some of the most depressed people in the world.
Absolutely.
I was class clown.
Yes. Yes.
You know, I did anything and everything I could to try to distract myself, you know, drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever I could do, whatever I could find. You know, any kind of stimulation at all that I could find that would distract me even for a few seconds was good enough.
Sure. I can see that, because during my teenage years, I also went into a deep depression. And the one thing that came out of it was an ability to write poetry when I was depressed. The problem was, or the other side of the coin is, when I got to 20, 21, 22 and started to enjoy life, my ability to write poetry.
Yeah, I wrote one line of poetry.
Right.
Not good poetry, though.
No.
Life is a disease for which there is no cure but death.
Right. Yeah.
That was the poetry I wrote. And I affirmed every day hundreds of times for the better part of 40 years.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. For me, what came out of it was I was hitchhiking along a long road with a friend. We eventually, it came towards 11, 10 o'clock at night. We decided to camp out, or to lie out under a bush along a road. And as I was there, the line came to me, "Love is pain." And suddenly the next line was, "Pain as through the hours of pregnancy, searching my breasts for escape, which cannot exist, because love is pain and I have known love." And then the next line, and the next, and the next, and the next, until I wrote 4 verses. And then I thought to myself, that's finished. That's a finished poem. And my poetry came very much like that. It came line by line. As soon as I was able to pick the pen up, I could write.
Right.
But once that time left, I found it very difficult to write. But if we can come on to 20s then, Morry, were you working?
Kind of. Well, I mean, I did, but they were all kind of go nowhere jobs. I was a bartender. I was a doorman. I was, you know, installing sunroofs in cars.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with those jobs.
No.
They didn't have any future for me, which wasn't surprising considering how I felt.
Yeah.
They were just ways to make minimal income. All my friends were advancing, and how I had friends, good luck. Don't even ask me how I had friends. I guess I acted the part of, you know, I guess because I was the clown, right?
That's right.
People were entertained by me. But yeah, I don't really remember much from there. I mean, you know, 16, I remember getting my driver's license. That was a big deal.
Right.
18, I remember drinking legally, which really didn't matter because I had been drinking since I was 13.
Right.
You know, I had gray hair when I was 13. So I had like 17-year-old in Canada, was 18 at the time.
Yes. Yeah.
Start drinking. So I would have people older than me asking me to go into the beer store to buy them beer because I had gray hair. So everybody figured that I was older than I was.
Yeah.
But I don't really remember much from my 20s. I mean, lots of, you know, the sad fact is, or good fact, I guess, depending on how you want to look at it. I always had a girlfriend.
Right. Right.
You know, I kind of bounced from, I thought of myself as a bumblebee going from flower to flower.
Sure.
And today, yeah, this is no slight on them. This is entirely on me. So if any of you are out there and you remember going out with me, don't take it personally. I don't remember names, faces, experiences. I don't even remember losing my virginity.
No. Oh, yeah.
At all. I don't remember with who. I don't remember her face. I don't remember her body. I don't remember her breasts. I don't remember her end. I don't remember anything.
No, no.
No idea who it was, when it was, how it was. I'm sure it wasn't very good though.
Well, yeah, and that may be the process that you're describing. Maybe that may be part of the process.
Maybe.
Um, but you certainly sound as if, for whatever you were going through, the work you were doing still brought you into contact with people.
Well, yeah, I was always around people. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah. And
So
through the whole thing, I realize upon, reflecting backward that the work I do today, like the real work I do
yeah,
today, the brainwave entrainment, the helping people to help themselves, I do understand now that everything that happened before, whether I remember it or not, was research,
yes, yes,
because it helped to form my opinions, my thoughts, my understandings at the times, which led me to where I am. So
yes.
believe it or not, I'm actually grateful for, I tried to end my life a bunch of times too,
Of course.
but I'm grateful for all of it. I'm
Yeah.
grateful for thousands of dislocations and broken bones and
Well, as
concussions.
am I. Yeah, as am I.
Smashed
Because
teeth. Yeah.
my life has certainly been roller coaster, but I wouldn't be doing this now if these things hadn't
Yeah.
happened. Can you tell us about one occasion where you tried to take your life, Murray?
So the most times, you see, a lot of people say when someone tries to kill themselves, especially if they don't succeed, it's a cry for help.
Yeah,
Well, no one knew I ever tried to kill myself. When my parents found out, when my mom was alive and she found out, she freaked out,
yeah,
because my dad just kind of nodded his head. Yeah, I'm not surprised.
yeah,
But, my mom freaked right out. So most of the time it was just doing things that, it's not, I mean, it's easy. If you really want to kill yourself, it's easy,
yes,
right?
yeah,
I could drive a car 100 miles, kilometers an hour into a brick wall,
yeah,
off a cliff. I could find a gun and shoot myself in the head. I mean, there's lots of ways to do
sure.
it, right? But I always chose ways that wouldn't kill me for some
Yeah,
reason.
no,
I thought they would. Like, I'd take pills, so I'd throw up
right,
before the pills could do anything. They
yes,
do a little bit, and by the time they could have done something, they'd be out of my system already.
yeah,
I'd just feel horrible for a few days, and then physically, and then I'd get better and try again another time.
right,
Um, I mostly, it was that kind of thing. It was pills.
yes.
Sometimes it was putting myself in very dangerous situations, but nothing ended up happening because my reflexes would save me.
That's what I was. That I think that's the
That,
area that
that's
I was.
probably the biggest one,
Yeah,
because that I would have done. I keep thinking that I tried to end it about 6 times, but probably a lot more than that now that I
yeah,
think. Probably in the dozens, maybe hundreds of times now that I think of it, putting myself in super stupid, super dangerous situations that, you know,
yeah.
that way I could kind of die accidentally almost.
Well, see
That's
again.
interesting. I got to tell you, thank you, because I've never really given this any
No,
thought beyond, trying to kill myself.
you
That's it.
see, it does ring a bell, Murray, because I also had episodes, not thinking of killing myself, but I had episodes where I did put myself in danger. And often, and it would always be when I was by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would tell myself it was to test myself,
Mhm.
and maybe it was, but they were dangerous situations. So I remember once, I don't really know this, but I was on a kibbutz in Israel, and it was a new kibbutz, and they brought along a huge tin swimming pool. And they laid it down on the ground. Obviously, the desert was uneven, and they wanted people to push sandbags underneath the pool. And I was the first one to volunteer. I pushed sandbags underneath this, God knows how many ton swimming pool it was, and thought nothing of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can relate to what you were saying. As we get closer to 30, Morry, are we talking relationships to family or anything?
Most of the relationships I had were meaningless.
Yeah,
Uh, Interestingly enough, and this thought just popped into my head when you said that, because my first thought was I really don't remember,
Right.
but I felt like I'm an alien. I'm
Yeah.
not supposed to be here.
Right.
Like I was sent here on some kind of a mission, and my ship failed, and it
Yeah.
wasn't able to take off, and I got stranded here.
Right.
I never really felt like I was part of a family.
No.
I
No.
felt very alone, and I do feel now, like with my wife, that I am, but I still don't feel like I'm part of this planet.
Right.
I feel like I wasn't here to start with. And I'm not sure that I belong, which is probably one of the reasons why I was inspired to do what I do.
Yes.
Because I figure, well, maybe I'm not from here, but I'm supposed to be here.
Right. Absolutely,
And
Morry.
that
And
just gave me some meaning in my life,
yeah.
even because, I came out of my severe depression in my early 40s.
Right.
Now it's kind of like smoking. I remember because I used to smoke like like a fiend
Yeah.
also.
Right.
But they say there's no such thing as an ex-smoker, only a smoker who doesn't smoke.
Yes.
So in my case, if I'm not careful, if I get too cocky thinking that I'm not depressed anymore, I think I might be more prone to becoming depressed again.
Yes.
Although a lot's happened in my life personally in the last year.
Right.
If I was going to be like, I'm kind of proud of myself, to be honest
Sure.
with you.
Yeah.
If I was going to be depressed, that
Yeah.
pummeling that I've taken or been exposed to, more accurately, would have done it for me. And not once have I had a depressed thought.
No, that's great. Have
So
you
yeah.
got children, Morry?
I'm sorry?
Do you have children?
No, never wanted kids.
Right. Right. No, that's fine. So I was just going to ask them if you would have told them how you and their mum met, but
I met my wife online, actually,
yeah, it's great.
on a
Yeah.
dating site, which funny enough disappeared shortly after we met. So it's almost
Right.
like they were just
Again,
crossed.
again, it was a case of you saying yes or no, Murray, and your wife saying yes or no, or even just whether she flipped or
Actually, what was funny was because remember, my whole MO was meeting women, going out with them,
yeah,
them breaking up with me normally because I make their life so miserable
sure,
that they have to break up with me.
yeah,
And eventually, as I'm getting better, I'm starting to feel differently and act differently. So I was meeting tons of women, all of
yeah,
them sweeties, all of
yeah,
them sweethearts, all of them, really nice, down to earth
yeah,
ladies, but no chemistry.
right,
So I was on maybe 15, 20, maybe even more dating websites. And I said, I think I'm just going to take a break
yeah,
because I'm not getting anywhere. And all I'm doing is wasting my time.
yeah,
So I took myself off every single website. And it turned out I forgot one.
right,
One I forgot was because there was no action on it. I wasn't getting any results from it. So it slipped my mind. I totally
yeah,
forgot about it.
yeah,
And about 3 days or so after, I had deleted myself from everything and taken myself out of the, out
yes,
of the game, so to speak. That's when she emailed me.
yes,
And one of the things she said attracted me to her was she was laughing because one of the things I said was, my idea of a perfect relationship is to see the person twice a year and have separate places to live. Sorry, twice a day,
yeah,
twice a year.
yeah, yeah,
Twice, maybe that's a Freudian slip there, but twice a day or just twice a week, actually. Let me just get this
right,
twice a week.
Murray,
And we all live in our own places, right? And it turned out that I did see her mostly twice a week for
yes,
most of the time. The only difference was that each time lasted 3.5 days.
right,
So I
yeah,
saw her all the time,
yeah. No,
basically.
and you're describing how I felt, how I feel now, Murray. I am single, and I think it's because I found living with someone very difficult. Three wonderful women I have spent time with years, and they have all said, "No, I want you to leave," because I've just found living with someone very difficult. And so I think I've put my hand up and say, I will probably go through life alone, and that's okay.
You know what? It's a matter of paying it, in my opinion, at least, it's a matter of paying attention to yourself, not to what society says.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are miserable in their lives because they're forced into
Yeah.
believing that a relationship is good for them. It's all about marketing.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
also relationships, I found, I mean, maybe I'm an idiot, but I'm sure a lot of people would vote for that.
Yeah.
But it can be like, now I don't drink milk because I don't think it's particularly good for you.
Right.
But pardon me. But it's kind of like a bag or a box or a quart of milk. It can be very good tasting for a few days, a couple of weeks, but after that, there's a best before date and it sours.
Yes.
So I think when people try to meet someone forever,
Yeah.
they're maybe not understanding that meet someone for today
Yes.
and see how tomorrow goes.
Good point. Good point.
You know, rather than looking. So it's not a matter of, you know, every situation is different and unique and valuable.
Yes.
And you meet someone for one night, that's valuable because you have something to learn. So as long as you try to learn something from every experience, I think you're going to be much better off than you would have been before.
And probably, you know, the first thought that came to my head was if you could treat your relationship like a new one every morning.
Well, people change. You know, I remember hearing something, I don't know if it was in a movie or a friend or someone, but they said, you know, what's interesting about men, I can't speak for women because I'm not one, but what's interesting about men is they can follow the same sports team forever.
Yes.
Like forever.
Ever.
Because you're following the crest on the jersey. You're not following the individual, right?
That's it.
You know, I follow the same hockey team and football team that I followed since I was remembering following teams.
Yes.
But none of the players are the same.
No.
So what does that tell me? That told me that what happens is that you cheer for the team, you love the team because the team is always changing.
Yes.
Always
Yes.
growing.
Yes.
So this woman that I've been with now, Branka, for I don't know how long, 13 years now, every single day, I am so grateful to be next to her in bed when I wake up with her.
Yeah.
And the biggest reason for that is she grows, she changes, she's intelligent, she's thoughtful, she thinks, she uses her head, and she's not afraid to say what's on her mind.
That's it.
And I love all of that about her.
Yes.
She is not the same person that I met.
No.
She's better, stronger, more beautiful, more this, more that.
Yeah.
Because she isn't satisfied just sitting around doing nothing.
No.
You know, and I think the lesson I learned is that in other relationships, no matter how much I thought I loved them, and there were, before this woman, if you would have asked me, Morry, how many times have you been in love? I would have told you 30 or 40 times.
Right.
At least.
Yeah.
Right. But now I would say once.
Sure.
And it's with the girl now.
Understand.
And the whole point is that she taught me that you can't just stay the same.
No.
My understanding is now about evolution. Evolution is a standard in humanity, in my opinion, in my understanding. So as long as you're always growing and changing, I think you're fine. And if you're with someone during one of those periods, terrific. You're happy. And if you're not with someone but you're happy, like, who cares?
Sure.
Don't get into a relationship. Don't do things because someone else tells you, or because, you know, the classic thing with Apple, for instance, is, and they're brilliant marketers, is that they tell you things you want. Yeah. And then you want them.
Yes. Yeah.
But in reality, if you peel away the layers of the onion, you don't really want it. But they're marketers, right? So trust your own instinct, trust your feeling inside your heart, your head, your gut. That's going to tell you what you really want, not what advertising technology.
It's just classic marketing, isn't it? Because we're always told to sell the client what they want, not what they need.
Yeah.
We probably don't need Apple.
Well, I mean, I'm not picking on Apple.
No.
The other company tries to do the same thing. It's just Apple's better at it.
Yeah.
So that's why I use them as an excuse.
And with what you've told us, Morry, this feeling of not feeling as if you're from here,
right?
Religion, does it play a part, or spirituality?
Not at all. No. I don't have any belief. My spirituality is about people. I believe in people. Yeah. I believe in possibility. through people. I
Yes.
believe we're all connected.
Right.
Question
Yes.
about that in my mind.
Yes.
But that being said, I don't believe that there's some greater, I mean, if there is a greater force, it's made up of all of our
Yeah.
little forces.
Yes.
It's not some omnipotent separate psychology or
No.
intellect that's judging us or doing anything. I mean, for me, I look at the world around me and I don't see any evidence of a grander being than the universal
Yes.
combination of all of us.
Absolutely.
Interestingly enough, I've had, you know, what you might term arguments with people of a religious bent.
Yes.
And the funniest thing is, by the time we hit the end of the argument, we realize it's more a matter of semantics.
Yes.
Our definition and what we choose to call something, as
Absolutely.
opposed to us actually disagreeing.
Yes.
You know, which I kind of find amusing, or I found amusing at the times, because it took me a long time, many of these quote unquote arguments, before I finally realized that in many ways we're not really arguing. We're kind of saying the same thing. We're just choosing to give the attributes elsewhere.
Another word.
Yeah.
I came to my mind was 22 years ago, I was introduced to Tai Chi. And one of the teachers was talking to us about Tai Chi and about connectivity. Anyway, it was talking about how an action that happens to us can have an effect on someone far away. He said, for instance, if I made you angry today and you got into your car and in anger you drove out of the gates and you hit someone walking past and killed them, and their kids or their mother and father were in New Zealand, your action would have had, is having or will have a profound effect on someone living 12, 15, 20,000 miles away.
Butterfly effect.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that was the first time that I thought really about this fact that our actions can affect down the line. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. As a matter of fact, I go even more esoteric than you're going. You're actually saying things that are easily proven.
Yeah.
I'm talking that if you're a little bit happier today than you were yesterday, then the whole planet is a little bit happier.
Great.
Than it was yesterday.
Do you expand that, Morry? Would you expand that out to the universe?
Sure. Everywhere. You know, our the interesting thing in my current understanding is that I believe we all exist in our own universes.
Right.
And you walk through, like if you and I were walking down a street in London, let's say,
yes,
and we were just walking and talking, our assumptions naturally would likely be that I see, feel, hear, and sense everything you're feeling, seeing, hearing, and sensing. And the truth is, we're both walking in two different worlds.
Absolutely.
Our perceptions are different. What we see is different.
Yes.
What we're hearing in the background is different. Everything is so different, but yet we feel like we're like you understand and interpret everything the way I understand and interpret it. But the truth is we don't.
No.
And you know, we all, they talk a lot with COVID and everything about living in bubbles.
Yeah.
Well, we've all lived in bubbles our whole lives, and we just assumed that we weren't in bubbles. But now it's kind of just brought everything into focus more, really. Different belief systems bring about different, you know, actions and reactions, like you were saying. So, you know, if one person believes in God, that's great. I mean, in my mind, I may not believe in God, but first of all, I could be wrong. That's number one. I understand very obviously with my life experience, I've been wrong enough times to know. Don't be too confident, Morry, in what you believe. That's actually why I don't believe in the truth. The truth is a fact. And when things become a fact, you stop thinking about them, because why should you think about it? It's a fact. So for me, I only believe in understandings. That way my mind is always open to new information, and that new information allows me to grow and evolve. And
interesting, fascinating. And it'd be interesting for both of us on that final breath, won't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what to expect, but you know, when you're depressed for 40 years,
Yeah.
depressed for 40 minutes,
Right.
you know what's coming. That's the
Yeah.
thing about depression. Depression makes you a procrastinator, prognosticator.
Yeah.
It makes you know the future
Ah.
because you know what's coming,
Yeah.
and it's not good. So not knowing what's coming is actually, for me, a real pleasure.
Absolute.
It's the
Yes.
best thing in the world because then there's the option of something good coming.
Great.
Whereas
That's
when you
it.
know what's coming and you know it's bad, well,
Well, yeah.
yeah.
So, how old are you now, if you don't mind me asking, Murray?
60.
60. So, how about we'll talk about you 40 to 50?
Okay, that was
40?
when I started turning around.
Yeah.
Most of my research was starting to coalesce into physical or audible, for that matter, products, if you will, that I started using a lot and started well, I mean, I was using it before a bit here and there too,
Yeah.
but it's when it started making the real changes, when I started becoming reborn. In many ways, I feel like I'm 900 plus years old,
Right.
because when you're depressed, time passes excruciatingly slowly.
Yes.
You know, you don't have to be depressed to notice that. When you're just not having a good time,
That's right.
time
Yes.
goes slow.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just feel like I was coming out of my cocoon. So not only do I feel like I'm over 900 years old, I also feel like I might be 15
Sure. Yes.
at the same time, because
Understand.
life really, I kind of came out of or have been coming out of my first stage of life, which
Yes.
was maybe a major, I'm not going to say learning stage, although maybe I learned more in
Yeah.
that stage, and into who I am at this stage.
Right.
And I see myself as going through stages,
Sure. Makes sense.
and I'll continue to go through stages.
Yeah. 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 And did your work, the work you're doing now, did they start in your 40s, or has that come in the 50s?
Actually, the work that I had that became more in the public, so people were able to use it other than myself, probably in my 40s.
Right.
But yeah, I would say in my 40s. But I've been doing the research. Like I said, I
Yeah.
realized that I've been doing research every time I searched for a solution.
Right.
I was doing research. I didn't call it research back then. Certainly not research for a product that I would create and
No.
design, but it was. So
Did you have a
looking back on it, I
mentor? Did you have
realized.
someone you looked up to?
Well,
Or
there was a gentleman, David Seaver,
uh-huh.
who, when I came across brainwave entrainment and started doing research into medical journals and things like that, I found this guy. He makes a light and sound machine, very high quality, by the way. If any of you are
Yes.
looking for something like that, check him out. But it's medical grade in Canada. That's how good it is.
Right.
And I ended up going to Edmonton. That's where he's located, Edmonton, Alberta.
Yes.
And I was there for, I think, a few days, 3-4 days for a training.
Yes.
Uh, and I learned a lot about how the systems work and how the brain works in conjunction, how it's affected by light and sound and things like that,
Right.
more than I was able to study on my own, you know, being right in with the guy who I consider the father of, you know, light and sound entrainment.
Yes.
And from there, I like grew by leaps and bounds, because then I had confidence in what I was doing, and I was able to, you know, create my own. I think that's what the real benefit is, and evolutionary process is, you know, just because you find someone that you honor in a certain way, learn from them and then put your own twist on it.
Yes.
Don't just think, oh, he's the expert or she's the expert. Let's just, you know, mimic them and,
No.
you know.
Well, they
So
often
I learned
say,
from him, and I've grown it in my direction, in
yeah,
my way
they
since then.
often say the sign of a good teacher is when the student surpasses. the teacher.
Well, that's nice of you to say, but I haven't surpassed him.
Oh,
I'm just going in a different direction.
yeah, well, there you go then. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I haven't surpassed him. He
No,
still knows leaps and bounds more than I do.
wow.
But in the fields and areas that I have chosen to take this,
Yeah.
I am unique unto myself.
Would
I
you
mean, the
say
truth
he'd
is,
be proud of you, Murray?
I think he would be.
Good.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's
I'm proud of myself,
good.
although my pride is not, from any reason other than help me having the ability to help others to help themselves.
Sure.
I'm not interested in, I was originally, when you're powerless in a depressed state,
Yeah.
You want to feel like you have power. So I got into superhero comics. So I could fantasize I was Spider-Man or
Yeah, yeah.
Mr. Fantastic or
Yeah.
Superman or whatever, Batman. But in reality, when it push came to shove, I realized I don't actually want to be a hero to anyone.
No.
I want to help them to be their own hero.
Right. And can we just talk as we're coming towards the end, Murray, a little bit about the products that you have and how they have grown?
Sure. Well, brainwave entrainment is the base of what I do. So for those of you who don't know what brainwave entrainment is, it's using a stimulation, a form of stimulus, usually sound, but it can be pulsing light as well.
Yes.
In a pulsed form that makes your neurons, which are your brain cells, follow, kind of like a monkey see, monkey do. So almost everyone can be fully entrained. And if you've never used entrainment and you don't believe me, think back to the last time you were listening to music that you like.
Yeah.
And you were just, mindlessly bopping your head, tapping your feet. That's a form of entrainment.
Yes.
So the entrainment that I do is keyed in on your neurons, which are your brain cells. You have billions of those, and your neurons pulse a minute electric impulse.
Yes.
And depending on how many times a second they pulse that impulse, that denotes what state you're in. So a lot of people talk about alpha and beta and theta and gamma and this and that, and they have no idea what they're talking about. Well, now you do.
Yeah.
Alpha is, as one type of alpha is 10 times in a second, your neuron is pulsing that electric impulse. Beta could be 28 times in a second. Gamma could be 40, 50, 60 times a second or more. So the unique thing about this is, though, depending on the region of the brain and the stimulation and the frequency, so how many times the pulse happens in a second, that dictates the kind of neurochemistry that your brain produces. And why that's important is the neurotransmitters, the endorphins, and the hormones that get produced get made into like a soup. So imagine you're a chef, and imagine I'm a chef. Yeah. And imagine you actually know what you're doing, and I'm an idiot. I have no idea what I'm doing. So you have 20 ingredients and I have 20 ingredients. Well, I'm going to make a soup that probably tastes like dishwater.
Yeah.
You're going to make a soup that tastes absolutely fantastic. That's what we do with brainwave entrainment. Our goal is to help you make a neural chemical soup that is fantastic.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what we do. And that's accomplished by wearing ordinary over-the-ear stereo headphones. For the most part, you close your eyes, you put it at a conversational volume, you lie down or sit with head support. You don't have to think, you don't have to write, you don't have to study, you don't have to do a thing. As a matter of fact, if you fall asleep or believe you fell asleep, you still get all the benefits.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. And what type of person have you used this on people at the moment?
Okay, I don't use it on anyone. Yeah, I'm not a coach. No. A lot of people think because it's self-improvement oriented at times. It can also be health oriented. I have one of my products, Revitamind and Revitamind Ultra, are used in Dr. Dale Bredesen's Recode program that he wrote of in the book, The End of Alzheimer's, where he has case study after case study showing people who have halted the progression of Alzheimer's disease, and even in some cases reversing it. So it can be used for all kinds of different purposes. Yeah. It's, I have testimonial after testimonial after testimonial. My own testimonial is maybe one of them, but it's not even the strongest of the testimonials that I have from people who have been able to alter how they perceive their lives. Remember, we talked about bubbles before. Yes. And our perception has a lot to do with what our world is like and what our bubble is like. And if you can alter your perception, then you alter what your bubble is like and you alter your experience. Yeah. Now they say that's easier said than done, but it's easier done
And
when you can alter someone's experience or perception of their experience, because when they use the entrainment, if it's properly engineered, then that will alter subtly
yeah,
their neurochemistry, which will actually alter their experience. And when
fascinating.
someone is depressed and they suddenly see that they can feel differently when
Yes,
they haven't been able to feel differently, that opens up a whole world of
yes.
possibility.
And it's something you said that has come to mind, Morry, is that we could be walking down the same street in London, and we would certainly describe the experience differently,
Sure.
but we would also, in that moment, be feeling differently. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it kind of goes there's an old story about four blind people who are around an elephant, and one of them is feeling the leg, and another one's feeling the trunk, and another one's feeling the tusk, and another one's feeling the ear. Each of them will describe
Yeah.
something completely different. I'm
Yeah.
feeling a tree. I'm feeling,
Yeah.
a leather coat.
Yes.
I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. And that's because of their limited perception from where they're happening to get their sensations from. So, like you said, and like I said, we can be walking down the street in London,
Yeah.
and then someone sits down with us and says, okay, Ernie,
Yeah.
what was your experience walking down? And you'll talk about a beautiful flower shop and maybe
Yes.
a doggy that was, rubbing up against your leg or something. And I'll talk about the rain and the fog,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and,
That's
and to us, it's two different worlds, right? But you and
yes.
I were walking side by side.
That's brilliantly put,
Yeah.
Morry. We're coming to the end, Morry. Can you tell people how they can contact you if you want them to?
Sure. Well, look, if anyone wants to try my stuff, I give away free recordings so you can test it first to make sure it's for you. You can reach me at Morry at themorrymethod.com. So that's TheMorrymethod, like Dennis, .com. Or you can even call me at 1-416-876-7939. You can do a search on the internet for Morry Zelkcovitch or the Morry Method or brainwave entrainment engineer, and you will get me many times over.
I will make sure those go into the post when we do this, Morry. So I want to thank you. Really, it's been a fascinating time
Well,
talking
I
to
want to thank you, Ernie, because you've helped me to, I don't know if any of your fans out there know this about you, but, Ernie kind of gives you a little bit of a heads up when he does these things to let you know what might be coming.
Yeah.
And when he gave me a rough idea of what to expect, my mind was, what they call a tabula rasa. It was a blank slate. I really didn't know
Right.
that I'd be able to answer any of your questions properly or entertainingly or in
You've
any way.
done that.
But yet you drew out a whole bunch of stuff that have given me a whole different understanding. And you see, this is my point, right?
Yeah.
For me, at least, I cannot believe in a truth, because if I believed in a truth, Ernie, I wouldn't have really listened to you, and I wouldn't have gotten a better understanding of myself. So, wow is all I can say. And thank you.
And I hope people do take this opportunity to contact you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. And thank you, everyone out there.
Take care, everyone.